TAP Flight 425 was a scheduled international flight from Brussels, Belgium, to Funchal, Madeira, with a stopover in Lisbon, Portugal. The final approach and landing phase into Funchal was the critical part of the flight. Madeira Airport at the time had a notoriously short runway, runway 24, just 1,600 meters, 5,250 feet, positioned on a narrow plateau with a steep drop into the ocean on one side and hills on the other. It was considered one of the most dangerous airports in Europe due to its geography and frequent severe weather. Thunderstorms and torrential rain were affecting the area. Visibility was reduced. Winds were gusty and variable. The runway was slippery and wet, and it was hard to stop. The flight attempted 2 approaches to Funchal's runway 24. The first approach was aborted due to poor visibility and unstable conditions. The crew decided to attempt a second approach, despite deteriorating weather. On the second landing attempt, the aircraft touched down too far along the wet runway, about 2,060 feet 630 meters past the threshold of a 5,250 feet 1,600 meters runway. The reverse thrust and braking were not sufficient to stop the aircraft due to wet runway surface, high landing speed, late touchdown. The aircraft overran the runway, skidded across the overrun area, and plunged off the edge of the runway into a ravine, breaking apart and exploding into flames. The fuselage's front section was torn apart and burned. Due to fire and structural damage, the wreckage contained many passengers trapped inside. 33 survivors were pulled from the rear section, which suffered less damage. Rescue efforts were complicated by fire, smoke, and rain. The flight crew landed too far down the runway and failed to initiate a go-around when it became apparent the landing was unsafe. The hydroplaning effect reduced braking efficiency. Decision-making under pressure contributed significantly. The crew persisted with a risky landing instead of diverting. Inadequate runway length for a Boeing 727 in wet conditions. Severe weather with low visibility and rain. Poor friction of the wet runway surface. Lack of clear go-around protocols under such conditions. The catastrophe brought to light the risks associated with operating jets on short runways, particularly in adverse weather. Madeira Airport extended its runway in later years, building it on stilts over the ocean, increasing it to 2,781 meters, 9,124 feet. TAP improved pilot training and revised its operational procedures for stormy weather approaches. It remains one of the worst aviation disasters in Portuguese history. The Boeing 727's remains were scattered in a ravine. Dramatic photos of the wreckage